Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Unsealed Spellbook podcast with me, Damien, Shrink Clarke, and my co-host here, Al, DCI Tackle Henley. How you doing, Al?
I'm good. I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I feel almost as good as yesterday before we lost the entire episode. So, yeah, that didn't go all according to plan. But hopefully we're going to get a more successful recording out here.
We'll run it back. We'll run it
Run
back.
it back, yeah. We'll do the salty run back. Same draft, all the same success. But just what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, all the quarterfinals games of Worlds have completed now. We know everyone who has progressed onwards into the semi-finals. If you haven't seen those games, go ahead and watch them now. I'll wait. You seen it? Good, right? Obviously, we did talk about Damwon DRX series on last episode, so we won't go over that in too much detail, but we will look at Damwon themselves and how their performance is going to go in the semi-finals. But let's start from the games that are coming up. So we're looking at Suning versus Top. Al, Top against Fnatic. There was a little bit of a turbulent series there.
You can say that again.
Yeah, absolutely. What what went right? What went wrong for them? Because let's be honest, they were very nearly 3-0'd by Fnatic, and a lot of people would have thought, Fnatic, did they even stand a chance? So
Yeah, so I actually think we should address the fact that Top had lost the first two games in this series. And I actually think it says more about Fnatic than it does Top in this case. I actually think it was innovative drafts that were coming out. Utilising the Singed into Ornn was very impressive. And Selfmade's navigation of Kindred was also quite impressive, given that he's not really proven himself on the champion,
yeah,
whether it be domestically or internationally.
yeah, I love that Singe pick. It's something I think I'm gonna have to try myself because it just seems once you see it, it seems so obvious, right? Like he can't move, he can't do the ult, he can't dash. Ornn's useless. He's just an item giver now. So
That's it, and I mean, most teams do just pick on for that a lot of the time. I actually
that's true.
think there's a few top laners that we've seen in the tournament so far that do just default to on as a. It scales well because it's a tank.
He's Boris
You al-
2.0.
but you also know that you're going to get something out of it at the end, even if you run it down.
Yeah. He's kind of the quintessential weak side champion, right? But when it comes down to it at the highest level, you can't just be weak side player. And really, Ornn doesn't have to be a weak side champ. We've seen Nuguri pop off on him. But yeah, I think in this instance, like he was definitely relegated to that against the Singe pick.
Yeah, and I mean, in these games where Fnatic were really taking the fight to Top, a big part of it was in the bot lane. Like the individual leads that Reckless and Hillsang were getting over Jackalov and Yanja. It was kind of a really impressive set of games for the Fnatic bot lane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plenty of kills within lane, even without jungler intervention. Obviously, we know Selfmade's he's labelled the carry on Fnatic, and that's kind of solidified by Reckless, his Senna picks, things like Nemesis on Galio. These are the kind of things we saw come out with the draft for Fnatic. So when you look at it in terms of a dream composition, that first game composition was pretty much it for Fnatic.
Yeah.
You've got your Senna, you've got your Galio, you've got Kindred, and you've got Rakan and Singed.
Yeah, double marksman straight off the bat. You know where the damage is going to come from. AD carry, obviously, nowadays, kind of more as a supportive utility kind of role. So obviously Kindred being your primary damage dealer there. But plenty of tools to be able to like mitigate damage to allow your carries to do the work that they're going to do.
And I think that's why Senna's so prolific in the world, is the fact that obviously she does bring damage with her being a damage carry, but she also offers additional health in team fights through the Q and the ultimate. So it makes your front line that much more beefier, as well as offering sustain to anyone else caught in the queue in the ultimate.
Which is probably why Jackie Love loves it so much as a pick. So
Well, that's it. That's
feels
it.
sad that he didn't get it in that game 1.
Even when he did get it, to be honest, like even in the games at top 1, I felt that Fnatic was still in control of that bot lane. But ultimately, we know that top did win that series. So I just want to take a look at why they won that series.
Yes, absolutely. So you're 2-0 down, you've been bot diffed, you've kind of been jungle diffed. In game 1, you've had a Singed trolling you, basically, because that's what Singed does. So great performance from Fnatic all up and down the map. You come out for game 3. What is it that top has in the tank that means that they can win? They can do the first ever reverse sweep at Worlds.
So I don't know what was said in between game 2 and 3, but Casa had just decided he had enough, really. He was done with losing.
Yeah.
So Casa for these last 3 games really showed up.
I know exactly what happened. They went out the back. Your coach turns around, absolutely belts a trash bin out the back, and he says it's fucking embarrassing.
It's fucking embarrassing.
That's all they needed.
And you're right, to be honest. Like that probably is what happened. But in the next 3 games, we saw a departure from the Graves in game 1? Yeah, the Graves in game 1, and you picked out Jarvan for game 2, which was kind of like an ode to the old style top way of playing, where Casa would just try and play the game through Knight and 369. And we see his Lee Sin and his Nidalee come out in the last 3 games, and he looks good on these champions. Like he was using Lee Sin's ultimate to set up plenty of kicks, and there was absolute perfect synergy in game 3 between him and Knight, kicking them into Orianna shockwaves almost all the time. And they were just running around as like a mid-jungle duo in the mid-game, just bodying Fnatic wherever there were weakness.
Which is exactly what's come up time and time again, and when it comes to a win condition for the game, more often than not, it's to do with this mid-jungle duo being online, and obviously top needed a couple of warm-up games to settle into it, but once they were on a roll, you couldn't stop them.
Yeah, that's right. And again, the draft started getting a bit smarter from top as well. Like they've drafted a comp that uses Ezreal, Karma, Sion, Orianna, and Lee Sin. So you've got the early game pretty much with Lee Sin, and Orianna is scaling, Ezreal is scaling. Karma naturally scales through to the items because she can apply shields to the full team. It pretty much makes the R5 Kazakhs pretty redundant.
Yeah.
Because there shouldn't be a world where any of these players are isolated in the mid game. Like I mentioned, you had the Lee Sin and the Orianna running around in a pair. You had the Karma and the Ezreal as a pair, and the Sion's obviously just going to get too tanky.
Yeah.
So Selfmade has struggles with this game. He picks up some kills here and there because he's a Kha'Zix after all. Does do obscene damage.
Absolutely.
But there's no way for him to get in on a team fight, and there's no way for him to assassinate an Ezreal who ends up building Iceborne Death Dance with a Karma shield on top, or an Orianna shield on top. There's no feasible way for Ezreal to ever die in these team fights.
No, it's a shame to see because obviously I think Fnatic were feeling themselves a bit after the first 2 games, and like they were saying, all right, if Selfmade's gonna carry, he can carry on anything. Which just didn't turn out to be true, sadly. In your opinion, I don't know if we actually covered this yesterday when we tried to record this before, but did we come up with a better R5 pick for Fnatic there? Was there any pivot, or because
this was the struggle really, because you're into Lee Sin, so you can't really pick something passive. You can't pick something like a Karthus or something because then you're funneling AP damage and you've only got a Jhin. Jhin is not a tank buster.
No.
So the Sion is just gonna both Sion and Ezreal once they've got armor, Jhin's kind of irrelevant against. So it had to be an AD jungler. they kind of like got themselves into this situation anyway because of the bands that they put out. Like
Yeah.
they were banning like Yumi and Bard because they knew what Top were trying to do.
Mm.
But obviously Karma was left open, so it might have been smart to take Karma mid, to be honest,
Okay.
rather than
I
the
don't hate that.
Vel'Koz, because the Vel'Koz
Nem-
didn't really do much,
yeah, Nemesis is good on it. I'm sure he's got games on it.
and the Karma offers like that added bit of protection and speed, which both benefit Rakan and Kha'Zix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think, in my opinion, the takeaway should have been Karma mid, but obviously they're feeling themselves. They go for the Vel'Koz.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Karma comes in naturally for top because they knew they were going to go for an enchanter because of the Yumi ban. Like, why would you ban Yumi if you wasn't expecting them to go enchanter?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you did make a really good point. I just want to go back to the Vel'Koz. You did make a really good point when we recorded this yesterday about the Vel'Koz and the prevalence of these artillery mages coming up now. So just talk us through why that's becoming a thing.
So yeah, it's more about like the progression of meta and what champions we're seeing more and more in the mid lane. So we're seeing a lot of Galio TF. We're seeing a lot of Orianna Syndra, Lucian when he gets through, and then any other picks are kind of like here and there. They're the predominant picks that we've seen in these last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So things like Vel'Koz comes in as kind of like an answer to some of these picks because of the range that Vel'Koz has. Like when you're playing Orianna into TF or Syndra or Galio, you have that trade pattern where like you have to outplay each other in order to get a good trade whilst farming. Some matchups are favoured, so like Galio tends to struggle against these mages because of his range or lack of range. But Vel'Koz thrives even more because he doesn't even need to get that close to him. He can just farm from a distance. His Q and W cooldowns at that high. Mana costs aren't massive.
Just
And
bide his time, wait until he's ready to.
Well, that's it as well.
hit
And
the
you can't even
five
like
mana.
yeah, you can't even out wave clear him either because once he's got Lost Chapter, he can just kind of eat through waves.
Yep.
So this is like the progressive response we've seen. And we saw it from Chovy as well in the DRX Down One series. He also tried to do it, but he didn't work then either. And it's the same issue that you have with MF that we mentioned yesterday as well, about when you have an ultimate that keeps you stationary for X amount of time.
Yeah.
You become quite susceptible. It's also not too hard to work around.
Yeah, which means you just need that, like, you need an epic amount of front line in front of you, which Fnatic didn't really have in that draft there.
They had the Ornn and the Rakan, which could provide a lot of disruption and CC, but the game kind of like fell away from them quite early, and Top just kept capitalizing on leads.
Yeah.
So going into game 4, because I ended up quite a stomp for Top.
This one, again, I didn't see this one, but Fnatic threw, right? Like, I heard that Fnatic had the early game, had a significant gold lead in game 4. What happened?
So this was a weird one because they were doing well, and the gold lead was in their favour, but all the gold was funneled into Selfmade. And so Selfmade was on, I believe, just looking at getting the draft up now. So Selfmade was on Graves. So Graves is fed. You've got Ashen set in the bot lane, and you've got Galio on. Now, what ends up happening is Galio really, really suffers this game. Knight picks the Jace into it, and it works very similar to the Lucian matchup, in which the Galio just does not get breathing room.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is, even though the gold lead looks like it's in the favour of Fnatic, which it was, the Galio was such a non-factor. Like, he had like 80 farm at about 16, 17 minutes in. Like, he was really far behind. And all he was there for, effectively, was an ult and maybe one big taunt before he gets killed.
Yeah.
Now, what I thought was really impressive is 369 recognised this really early on a Sion. So second item on Sion, Frozen Heart. That pretty much meant that he was unkillable in these team fights.
Yep, no major
Especially-
AP threat after that point.
Exactly. There was no reason for him to build any sort of MR.
Mhm.
It was all about the armor. And Graves, in typical self-made fashion, goes down the lethality route because it's the best for Graves in terms of, the one-shot carry potential. But we didn't see the Black Cleaver come out, which in this case might have been the best course of action because of the Frozen Heart
Are
coming
you
out.
pro Black Cleaver? Are you a Cleaver
I am.
believer?
In this game, I'm a Cleaver believer.
Oh man, yeah. I think Fnatic's plan there was to just pretend the Scion didn't exist. It was like, okay, we'll kill everyone else first, and then we'll deal with that afterwards. Which it can work, Scion can be separated, but I just don't think they managed to get the fights that they were looking for.
That's right. And 369 does look good on the Scion. He
Mm.
picked it twice that day, and he still killed Whipper in
Yeah.
one of the games, which was pretty disappointing for Whipper. But obviously, it's another champion in 369's arsenal that he can just kind of pull out when he needs to, circumstantially, to the point where Fnatic feel they need to ban it. So
yeah, was it
game 5
where
Game 5 is when they banned it.
Was it Hillisang who said, "Please God, don't make me deal with that champion"? I think it was. I think it was in the press conference afterwards. They asked.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, they asked Whippos like that. Why the Scion ban? We didn't really get the Scion ban. And he goes, "My support asked me, please God, ban Scion. I don't want to deal with that champion. Ban it." And so I did.
It's surprising, really, because Sion's doesn't strike me as the big problem in that team comp. It just became a problem because of the circumstances.
Yeah.
I think the big problem was the Jace, really, because he was just eating away at this Gallagher.
Yeah, I don't know that necessarily you have to lose that matchup as hard, though, right? With a bit more jungle intervention, with a bit more protection.
That's right. And that's kind of what happened. That is what happened, but all the gold went onto self-made.
Yeah.
So Nemesis was kind of starved.
Mm.
As well, they picked the Galio into the Jace because I'm assuming that they thought it was Jace top.
I guess so, yeah.
And then the Scion came in last pick.
Mm.
And then at that point, Nemesis probably just looked straight in the camera and just contemplated his life choices.
Yeah. But in Game 5, I did get to see Game 5. I remember watching it thinking, oh, we're going quite long on this one. And then I saw top at Fnatic's base towers, 25 minutes. I'm like, what the 25 minutes? This game really went down that fast. It was a really, really quick last game. And up to that point, I thought Fnatic aren't out of it. They're not winning, but they don't feel like they're out of it. I think just in those last sort of few minutes, I think they just fizzled out and they just didn't have anything left to give. They didn't know how to win the game from where they were.
Yeah, that was effectively it. And the composition this time was kind of favoured towards a more global style game where you have the TF ult and you have the Gangplank ult to try and force these mid-game team fights and try and get picks, force 4v3, 3v2 advantages.
Yeah, it's a tried and tested method at World so far.
Yeah. We've seen it quite commonly used. But Knight picks up the Silas in response to that, so straight away you've got an answer to the TF where necessary. I don't actually think he used it that often. He was just that quick to roam.
Yeah.
So there was instances where Knight was able to pick up some kills in the bot lane from where Fnatic just took too long to kill the Ezreal.
I suppose the scary kind of double edge of Silas into the TF pick is he does have eventually does have relatively quick wave clear as well, so he can at the very least match a TF roam if he's walking, and if he's not walking, he'll take your ult and he'll go with you. It's a very, it then becomes a very sort of skill based matchup.
It does.
It's a really smart pick.
It's a pick that you can only do if you're capable at Silas, and you can navigate him well in both the early game and the mid to late.
Just like Caps.
But well, that's what I was going to mention.
We'll get into that.
We see not a lot of people are picking Silas for that reason, but in this case, we've seen Knight pick out Nocturne mid as a response to TF.
Yeah, I was surprised not to see that again. To be honest, I guess they needed AP rather than AD in the mid lane.
Yeah, that's true, because they did funnel into the Lee Sin in the first rotation. So straight away, you you funnel yourself into the AP mid,
Mm.
and they just left support on top. I mean, they went AP top as well. The Vladimir came in after they'd kind of confirmed that there was no real front line on Fnatic, and that was kind of the downfall. Because no real front line, Ezreal can just kind of keep poking you, keep chipping away at you. And to be fair, to Selfmade, he did try his hardest to get on that Ezreal.
Yeah.
But he was just too slippery. Like, even getting away on like 1 HP, just if he does that, it doesn't matter because you've blown everything as a Gragas. You know, there's not much you can do afterwards.
That's really strong mental to be shown by Jackie Love there to play. Was this his 4th Ezreal game in the series, I think? So he played 4 Ezreal games, 1 Senna game, I think, through the whole series.
I believe 2 Senna games, 3 Ezreal games.
2 Senna games was it? Okay, so it's his 3rd Ezreal game. The first one ended 0-6-2 for him. So for him to then go back onto that champion and go, actually, no, don't worry, that was an outlier. I'm good at this champion. I won't do it again.
Yeah, he was feeling good after game 3, I think, where he had kind of like the protect the Ez comp sort of thing going on. So
they built him back up. That could be Top's real strength in a best of 5 is that they've got these players where, you know, they try to keep all the plates spinning. If one of them stops spinning and everyone just stops spinning their own plates for a second and helps to spin that one, and then, you know, over the course of a best of 5, you build these players back up and rebuild your momentum. And I think that's one of the key strengths of Top, and it's something they're going to need going into the Sooning series.
That's right. And to start talking about the Sooning series as well, we'll just go over some of the positive points that we took from that series. Typically, the performance of SOFM, Huanfeng, Angel, all of them really showing up, but we know who the real star has been this Worlds.
Know. Your boy predicted it. I told you to watch out for him. I told you he was going to come and get you. I told you he was going to buy Sheen first item, and he was going to make you irrelevant. I didn't tell you that, but it happened.
Yeah, Bin has been a monster. The Sooning JD series, I think, was one that a lot of people were split about, but it seemed like the narrative was JD favoured, just given the overall trajectory of the LPL regular season.
They're the second best team, Sooning are the 3rd, right? That's how it goes.
And that's how it should have gone, but no, Sooning decided to just twist that on its head, and even though they lost the first game after JD did kind of get the upper hand on them, did proceed to come back and get 3 games on the bounce.
Well, to put it into one sentence, game 1 was lost because we drafted Galio without any engage.
Yep, it's a cardinal sin.
Nothing more needs to be said about it.
It's
told
illegal.
You not to do it. Top, Sooning, G2, Dam 1. Don't want to see it.
Even when it works, it's illegal.
Even when it works, it is illegal gameplay. Which it did work in game 2 for him, right?
So, yeah, in game 2, it was game 3. Sorry.
Oh, it was game 3, was it? Sorry.
Yeah. But game 3 was also the game where a Gangplank turned up to lane with Sheen. So
yeah.
I do think game 3 is a bit of it's a sad state of affair for JD because Zoom was a non-factor pretty much from level 1. You know, you're a Volibear, you're going into lane against a Gangplank with Sheen and Grasp. You just get poked off constantly.
Yeah.
GP's got the mana needed to repetitively fire off those Qs and the damage associated with it. It's just not fun. And it pretty much resulted in a Build-A-Bear workshop for the Volibear like 20 minutes into the game.
That bear got stuffed.
Absolutely. Trying to build like 3 different items just because the circumstances around the game was changing a lot faster than he was getting gold.
I'm just imagining various Build-A-Bear accessories on. It's got the Doctor Who 3D glasses. Got like it's Harry Potter series now, so it's got Harry Potter wand.
He's got the Kindle gem. He's got the Glacial Shroud. He's got the Balmy Cinder. He's got everything. He's got a Brambles vest.
Oh my word! Everything a growing boy needs.
Exactly. but he didn't get the win.
No, get that bear some marmalade.
Because Ben had Triforce Infinity Edge.
That's a Paddington reference. It's a bit old school now, I suppose. But yeah, no, Ben obviously massive carry in that game, and into game 4, did we try and shut Ben down? Was that our objective, or?
I mean, in game 4, Ben was on the volley bear, so it wasn't as much of a issue. Like they just decided not to play through Ben this game. They knew they were into Renekton top, as LPL likes to play Renekton top all the time.
First pick,
whenever possible. It was actually third pick this time. Third pick.
Oof. They nearly didn't get it.
I know, after the Smokers duo came in, Graves and TS.
Smokers duo.
So they knew that top lane was going to be rough, and they didn't really fancy the gangplank. The gangplank was banned, sorry. Justifiably so.
Absolutely.
I think.
I ain't dealing with that shit again.
Yeah. But the volley bear into Renekton is a simple, basic matchup that's going on right now, so I'm not surprised at that. It does result in the volley bear losing because Zoom was playing quite well that game. Sorry, go on.
I've definitely seen volley bears win that matchup.
Yeah.
I know that they shouldn't, but I've definitely seen it.
Oh yeah, it's just that Zoom is quite a proven Renekton player, and Zoom was a pretty big part of JDG's success. Like, this guy's not to be slept on, regardless of his previous performance. And he did kind of Kingdom Ben in the early game, but that it didn't matter because the Volibear's not the carry. Volibear just needs to stay alive and get one bit of CC off and be a tanky frontline.
Yep,
that's effectively what he did. It was so JDG went the Blitzcrank in this game. And it kind of just seemed like an answer to the Thresh. I don't know how comfortable Lumao was on it. I don't know if he's had many games in the regular season.
I feel like LPL players should have some Blitzcrank games under the belt.
You'd think so. But some of the fights there was just a bit of poor decision making where, if you're going to Blitzcrank cook any of these champions, you probably don't want it to be the volley bear, but...
No, get that big bear, give him a big bear hug, cuddle him, hold him tight.
Well, that's what happened, and he decided to bring that hug straight on the face of Ashe. So, and again, Angel picking up the Zoe. Angel looked really good on Zoe. On these games, on game 2 and 4. Zoe, I think, is a pretty strong pick. It seems to be like the default pick into Galio as well, because it's Zoe favoured. It's not one that matches the Galio. It's one that kind of tries to play a game that doesn't benefit Galio.
Yeah.
So, whereas Galio thrives in those teamfight situations where everyone's clumped up and you're getting jumped on, Zoe's obviously want to be kind of spread out, hitting you from afar, keeping distance. Same with Jhin. Jhin fits this as well.
Yeah.
And you see them both drafted first.
Yeah, I think Zoe's an interesting pick because, like you were saying earlier about the control mage meta, Zoe isn't that, but she also isn't an artillery mage. She's kind of a utility kind of mage, and which we've already said that utility is really good because it's all about keeping normally your jungler ahead to carry the game. And the other wonderful thing about Zoe is she can get out of her lane so much quicker than Galio, and she can go place vision, she can go gank, she can go where she wants, and the whole map is hers.
She's effectively a burst mage, but with elements of zone control and long range CC.
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstances, the terrain that's in the way of the fight. But it's also just that fear because as soon as you get in sleepy triple bubbled, you're going to get a Palistar to the Nuri. So
yeah,
it forces the team to kind of stay together to block them. Because if you're isolated and you get hit, you might as well just get one shot. So yeah, Suning demonstrated good knowledge of draft and also good, apart from game 1.
yeah. There was
and good capitalization on failures that JDG tried to do during the game. They had good answers, and what are we thinking when we look at Suning versus Top?
Well, I'll take the top perspective because I think you're going to do better for Suning. So I think top. We're just looking at individual lanes here, right? We're looking at, does 369 beat Bin? I think so. Does SoFM against Casa? Well, there's a bit of a difference in playstyle there. So that's going to be whose playstyle is going to match up better there. Whether it's going to be that sort of supportive style that Casa sticks to, which he needs to stick to because when he tried to change it didn't work for him in the Fnatic series. Stick to that supportive style, get your laners ahead, let them do their thing. You've got fantastic laners. Knight is obviously got a champion Ocean. I don't see anything that Angel can bring out that Knight can't deal with. And then when we get to the bot lane, obviously Jackie Love and Yuyanja not going to have that much trouble. Huangfang and Sword Art have shown like ridiculously good ceilings. Like that stylish Jingle from inside from inside JDG's base. Like,
Galaxy Brain flanking all.
Huge. Puts them like completely throws their mental off. But as we've already seen, Jackie Love, his mental can be shaken but not completely ruined. And obviously what was going wrong for them in the Fnatic game was a lot of Yuyanja trolling, basically. So if we can rein that in as well, I don't see Suning having a lane to play through, and I think that's what's going to fundamentally be lead to a top esports victory. But if Suning were to win, how do you think they do it, Al? It's a very big question.
It is, and I do want to comment on a couple of things. So we have, if we're talking about individual performances in each role that we've seen so far, I would probably give it to 3 out of 5 Suning players over Top.
Okay.
This is purely based on like performance within Worlds and not indicative of the actual player's ceiling or potential performance, picks, things like that, because there's a lot of factors. But if we're just going on who's looked good, who's looked really good, obviously we can say Bin. Bin has had some really good players to the point where he's won the game for Suning on several occasions. 369 not as much.
No, they do say he's 369 because he rolls a 3, a 6, or a 9. And we have, it's there's a reason for that, and it's because sometimes he rolls a 3.
Well, that's it. And having said that, though, Bin does also have his weaknesses. Like, he can be prone to overextend in these team fights. We saw him get caught out quite a bit in the G2 series. Where I say series, the G2 game where that lasted quite a while.
Might as well have been a series, yeah.
Yeah, and he obviously won the game for them ultimately. But prior to that, the game only went on so long because there was little mistakes coming through the Suning, like little cracks appearing in the Suning's formation and late game execution that G2 capitalized on. And we should assume that Top are easily able to capitalize on these kinds of cracks as well, given the opportunity.
Yeah.
And they might even just put the nail in the coffin if we're putting Top above G2. So yeah, that's a weakness for Bin, and I suppose you could say Suning in general. But I would say he's had better highlights. SOFM. If we're talking about Jungle Kingdom, you've got to talk about SOFM.
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy's been a monster in the jungle for the majority of Worlds. Even the games where he lost, he still looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's sort of like, probably, if we're talking about teams that are dependent on junglers, he's second only to Selfmade.
Yeah.
To Fnatic, in that sense. I don't know how... The biggest problem that they're going to face is his ability to handle the mid-jungle duo of Casa and Knight, because I'm not sure how like Angel and SOFM match up to them in that regard, because we've seen some like excellent coordination between Knight and Casa so far.
Yeah, Yeah, and although that's not entirely absent with Suning, it's
No,
not.
no.
There's just not been that same level of, like you say, highlight moments that Caster of Night have had, just even in their most recent best of 5 against Fnatic.
Well, that's it. I just keep flashing back to all the leasing kicks into shockwaves and things like that.
Yeah, so
It's
does
perfectly timed.
so does Nemesis. Oh no, again.
I think the bot lane. I think we've kind of got to give it to Dracula over Juan Feng. I know Juan Feng did get this. He's had really good performances on Jin, and
Still a rookie. Still a rookie.
yeah, still a rookie. I think Dracula can just offer a bit more, given when he's put in the driving seat. You know, if he's able to win the lane, we've seen his Senna when he's looking good, and it's a different champion entirely.
Oh yeah.
So if we see that Jackie Love, you know, it's going to be difficult for Juan Feng to really match up to it, I think. Having said that, though, I would put Sword Art over Yuyanja. I think Sword Art is a big part of the Suning team.
Absolutely.
He's been around for ages, and supports have been quite pivotal in a lot of these team fights and mid-game skirmishes. You know, their roam timings, their item choices, their ability to create something out of nothing. That's the reason why Hillsang was performing so well.
Yep.
Like, he looks really good for Fnatic. And Yuyanja is kind of taking that back seat, sort of. Like, and I think he might get punished there. I mean, this is Yuyanja's first international tournament, so he's still a rookie in that sense.
I didn't realize Yuyanja was a rookie as well, but
yeah, but so in that instance, I would also give that to Sword Art in terms of the matchup. But he is still with Jackulov at the end of the day, and these two have been playing with each other for the better half of summer split. They're looking set to take over bot lane.
So
Sword Art might just leave it and get something mid lane and try and disrupt that mid 2v2.
Okay.
Make it a 3v2.
So your win condition for Suning potentially is you put Huang Feng in a bit of a weak side role, you know, give him an Ashe, give him a Jin, give him something he can just sit back on. You let Sword Art roam and create advantages, work with Sofum to, I don't know, either feed Angel or Bin. Bin's obviously a lane that you're looking for Sofum to play through to get a lead, to sort of transfer pressure across the map. Is that kind of what you're getting at with Suning?
Yeah, so like we know for a start that Huan Feng's happy to play the Jin. Like he played it 3 times.
Stylishly.
Exactly. He played it 3 times in the last series. And he can pull out with the picks, but I'm sure that Jin Ashe more than capable of just taking that kind of defensive role. And yeah, it will result. The game will be decided on jungle mid, I think. I don't think we'll see too much action in the top line. Hopefully, I'm wrong, because I do like to see a good little like scrap in the top lane.
Oh, we all do, yeah.
But I'm hoping it's a bit more interesting than like the Sion on lanes that we saw.
Nah, we're gonna see some Ignite TP Camille up there. That's
yeah. Ignite TP Camille versus Jax with, I don't know.
Also Ignite TP.
Spellbook Ignite TP.
Oh. Dirt.
But so yeah, that's Suning's win condition. I think try and disrupt the mid 2v2. Keep 369 in lane, keep Jackulov in lane, and try and, depending on the draft, you've got to try and force the right conditions for you. So if we just kind of think about the draft, you're obviously going to have SOFM on some sort of carry jungler. It could be Graves, could be Nidalee, could even be Kindred. You're going to see an AP mid if that's the case. I mean, if they choose to go Nidalee, they choose to go Nidalee, but I can see Nidalee getting banned. So because they might want to ban it against Casa, bearing in mind.
Yeah.
So probably see AP mid. Angel look good on Zoe. You can pick Zoe.
Yeah, Zoe. I think Galio's a fine pick.
Yeah, Galio has the potential to get bullied, but I think we'll see Zoe. I don't think we'll see TF from Angel. To be honest.
No, I don't think. I mean, he may have played it already at Worlds, but there's no standout moments from an Angel TF for me.
Not in my mind.
No, maybe in the G2 games.
Yeah, I'm just
that was just chaos.
trying to find. We've seen an Akali from him. That could be spicy.
Okay, yeah.
We've seen
Doesn't often. It's not really getting banned at the moment.
we've seen Aurelia.
Okay, so it's got some stuff.
Yeah.
Wasn't it been on the Aurelia? Or was that a different
Oh
game?
wait, I might be wrong here.
I swear it's been because I saw a highlight recently where he just about survives.
Oh yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the wrong draft.
Angel did play the Akali though. I do remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't really seen Aurelia mid actually. Thinking back.
Now I want to
Forgot
say Caps played it, but I'm not entirely sure.
possibly, but in any
In
case,
any case, yeah.
yeah, my gut instinct says top still takes it. I'm hoping we get a close series. I kind of feel like though if top show up in the same form as game 3 onwards in the Fnatic series, like if they're in that mindset, it's really, really hard for them to lose.
Yeah.
Sunni will have to come up big if they want to force any upsets, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, once again, I don't want to encourage gambling by any means, but I do have a bet on for these upcoming semi-final games. And my prediction for the top Suning game is still 3-0 for top. Because I just I think if anything after that Fnatic series, they are just stronger. I think they come out the back of that best of 5 stronger. I don't think they take anything for granted now. Because essentially that's what they did to start with against Fnatic. No matter what happens, I think top win because even if they've shown that they can go down 2 games and still have the fortitude to bring back 3 more wins. So just a level, a cut above, I think is just what it comes down to for top.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, if you have the mental fortitude to do that, it's going to be really hard to break that. Like you've demonstrated that you're able to do it. And I think, I just don't think they're going to switch off. I think they're going to be switched on from the get-go.
Yeah. Don't know how to switch off like Nicholas Angel in Hot Fuzz. As a reference. Anyway.
It's been a while for that film.
I love that film.
For me.
I went through a whole Edgar Wright thing not long ago. Watched all this stuff. Yeah. Love it. Right. Looking at the other side of the bracket, we've got a spicy semi-final coming up. I think this is probably the most exciting semi-final.
I am so looking forward to this game.
Yeah.
Is it the Sunday or the Saturday?
I believe it's a Saturday. No, is it top on Saturday? I hope it's a Sunday because I'm off work.
Allow me just to check.
I'll allow it. I will allow it.
It is the Saturday.
I'm going to be at work. I'll have to watch it in the evening.
I won't say a word, my friend.
I appreciate that. It's total media blackout. I'm going to disappear off the face of the earth until about. Well, I'm guessing it's. Do you know what? I'm guessing it's going to be a 5-game series. So
I hope so.
I get home from work like 6 p.m. 5-game series. By 11 p.m. ish, I'll be able to talk about it. So.
So this is. I think this is the most interesting purely because of how decisive the quarterfinals were for both these teams.
Yeah.
Both saw 3-0s in their respective games.
Absolutely. The G2 Gen G game is obviously the most recent. I literally just got finished watching the voice comms for G2 from that game. They were having a whale of a time. There was no moment in that game where G2 didn't know that was going to be a 3-0. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like I think I went into it. I had G2 to win it, but as a 3-2, I thought Gen G could at least compete. I thought there were weaknesses in the G2 bot lane that Gen G could exploit, but just none of that just seemed true. Like the bot lane didn't seem weak.
You're right. Like I mean, Mickey has had a good Worlds. To be fair, it has been Pex who's kind of like. Don't get me wrong, he has done well, but you know he's not Caps. He's not Wonder in the sense of consistency. So there has been a bit of weakness in the bot lane that other teams have capitalized on, and you got to remember he's against Ruler, who was one of the most decorated. Well, I say he's not that decorated, but he's definitely a legacy player he's got one Worlds, I
I
believe.
say, well, he's got a Worlds. He's got one
Yeah,
title.
he's got one Worlds, but I don't actually think he's got any domestic titles.
Two. I was watching.
Two.
I was watching this or that the other day, and he does have two domestic titles,
Okay.
but
So
not
yeah,
nearly as many as Caps.
off Pex.
Or Perks, yeah.
So if you're looking at domestic success, then yeah, he obviously gets Pex favoured. But Ruler's been around back when Korea was kind of the like, the games were so close in terms of top tier League of Legends, like season 5, season 6, season 7 times, where EU and NA were kind of fell by the wayside because we've only seen EU really rise up in the last few years as an actual competitor to these teams. So NA's not, but
feels bad, man. But they're not.
True.
I am the apologist, but yeah.
So it's like, yeah, Ruler's not been winning many domestic splits, but he's been up against Faker. He's been up against like all these legends of LCK
Chovy,
that I can't think of right now.
He's
I'm
been
trying to
there.
think back to players from like a few years ago. But no, yeah, I did want to ask you a question.
Go on,
In
try
your humble opinion,
me.
whose 3-0 looked more dominant?
Look more dominant. This is quite an interesting one to look at. I think overall it was down ones. It just didn't look like Dan One, like DRX had a way to win against Dan One. Genji, at least in game 3, you know, they started to match him on kills. Like, I think if Genji had like 3 more games against G2, you probably would have seen a different result because they started to adapt and learn in the best of 5. Whereas DRX already knew everything they needed to know against Dan1. Like, they'd played them really not that long ago, and they'd seen all their games, and they just didn't have any adaptations to make. I mean, they obviously tried the Vel'Koz on Chovy in the mid lane, but no, I think it's a matchup based thing. I don't necessarily think it's to say that Dan1 are more dominant than G2. I just think their matchup was heavily more Dan1 favoured, just because these teams had met so many times before.
The reason I asked this is for 2 reasons. One, because we saw Dan1 and G2 face off last year, and that I believe was a 3-1 to G2.
Yep.
So G2 obviously won historically, but we also know that this Dan1 is a different kind of monster.
It is. Not many different players, a couple here and there, but still.
It's more of like their synergy and how they play. Their play style, I think, is a big part of it. And that brings me to my second point: is that these 2 games, Dan1 DRX, G2 Genji, they both begin with G and D respectively.
Oh, we're getting a conspiracy theory shit. I love it. Let me say.
And they also are like parallels of each other. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is how the Dan1 playstyle is similar to the Genji playstyle. Of, you know, they kind of try and control the game. You pick a lane to play through and you win through that lane.
Yeah.
It's just that Dan1 have a bit more options with that, whereas Genji kind of default to Ruler or BDD. Even though Rascal has been doing pretty well. And G2 is like DRX, or rather, I would say DRX is like G2, in the sense of they're like a bit more chaos.
Okay, yeah.
A bit more sporadic team fighting and skirmishes. So, in both those instances, we saw the patient team, the patient scaling, methodical team win, and also the super skirmishy, fly around the map team, fight you anywhere you want team win as well.
Yeah.
So who does it better? That's the big question.
Yeah. I definitely think when it comes to flying around the map, doing crazy stuff, I think G2 does it better than anyone. I think, though, what this comes down to is actually I was going to come with the point. I think G2 and Dan1 are very similar, because I think where this sort of skirmish heavy style comes from for G2 is the fact that they're always looking for a win condition. They're always fighting for their win condition. And this is something that Damwon does as well. They're always looking for that win condition. Doesn't matter what the current game state is. They always seem to know that in that game state, there is this play that can be made. And in G2, sometimes I think potentially it looks worse because they take more low percentage plays than Damwon would. But that's not. But Damwon will still take that low percentage play if it means that they can gain an advantage in the macro. So I actually do think G2 and Damwon are kind of similar on kind of the grander ideology. I just think the way that translates is you do tend to have more champion picks out of G2 that favor like side lane skirmishing, and you tend to have more picks out of Damwon that favor a team fight with maybe a flanker. Something where they're going to take an advantage in a different way.
Yeah. So going on from that, I found that point really interesting about the low percentage players and about how they both kind of go for them. I kind of feel like the willingness to go for them is a lot lower for a lot higher for G2 in the sense that they're willing to take a really low percentage player, and sometimes like they kind of like throw it, and we've seen it on a number of occasions. We saw it against Suning, we saw it against Fnatic in the regular season constantly about this this kind of overstaying, because if we pull this play off we win the game. But really, if you don't pull that play off there and then, you just kind of recall with like an extra 4k gold and win in about 2 minutes time.
Yeah. I think that's probably a key difference, I suppose, in the G2 Damwon mentality, is that G2 kind of always want to win now. Whereas Damwon don't mind waiting an extra 5 minutes to win.
That's it. Sometimes it's a bit of impatient, But we've all seen G2 voice comms at times. They can get a bit excited.
Oh yeah.
They want to win. They want to win the game and they want to look good doing it.
Yep.
And that's what makes G2 a fun team to watch, really. And it makes... I think they're the most interesting team at Worlds in terms of like a personality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So like people look at Gen G and they see like a team of 5 players. People look at G2 and they see like they know the players and they know the style of play that they make their own, and it's just a bit more charismatic, I think, and they kind of embody that in their League of Legends as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want to put this. It's like they want to put a show on for us.
Yeah, every member of G2 is a cast member in a like you say, this crazy show, and like a crazy dramatic show. There's highs and lows, there's twists and turns, and sometimes you get a satisfying ending if you're an EU/G2 fan. Sometimes leaves a bit of a bitter taste, leaves you on a bit of a cliffhanger until the next season.
And that's right, and that's why we saw like they weren't looking so hot this season. The start of the summer season. But that they got the playoff buff. They've had the Wells buff clearly. I mean, they are going through a second seed, so maybe it wasn't as much of a buff as we thought. And it was Suning who got the best of them, who are obviously in the same stage of the competition as they are. So
yep, and interesting but probably irrelevant question: Suning better or worse than Damwon?
Well, I mean,
no, don't think about it. Just answer.
No, no. We said earlier that we're giving the series like 3-0 to top.
Yep.
And a team that goes 3-0 to top can compete against Damwon.
There you go. So Damwon better than Suning. Suning better than G2. That's proven.
Well, it's proven.
Sorry, G2, you're out.
Yeah.
No,
G2's got to make that low percentage play.
They've got to make, and it's a real low percentage play. No, I think since coming out of groups and reaching quarterfinals, I do think G2's figured something out. I think their read on the meta's better. I think they're, the way that they've found a way to make the way that they play the game already suit the meta.
They are not wasting time. Like
No.
We're getting like a week between games now. Mm-hmm. They're not wasting that.
No.
And
Although I did just see a video again of Yankos on a boat, and eating sugar-covered strawberries. And while he was on this boat, he was like, "Yeah, this is really nice, but I kind of wish I had a girl with me and not a bunch of sweaty fucking nerds." So that was pretty funny. Maybe they are.
But they're not wasting time.
No, they're not wasting a second. Jackie Love's probably on a boat as well right now with sweaty nerds.
Nah, Jackie Love's getting all the girls.
No, I meant Showmaker. That's not his game.
No. So, last question in regards to this.
Go on, try me.
Result: Damwon G2.
Damwon G2. Oh boy, I made my prediction.
You got your bet.
Yeah, I've got my bet. I made my prediction a while ago. I made it before I saw the Gen G series because it was based on my pick'ems. I did have to wait until after the Gen G series to make my bet though, and I still kind of went this way. So I went with Damwon to win 3-2, but I am so uncertain. Like I could honestly, I could see literally any result come out of this series. I could see a 3-0 for G2, I could see a 3-0 for Damwon, and none of it would surprise me. Like it just seems volatile and crazy and exciting, and Caps is in the form of his entire life, but he's also going up against Showmaker and Nugri, who are in the form of their entire life. Like, I think in general, looking back, I think in general, Wonder has gotten the better of Nugri. So I wonder if he's got a little mental block.
Well, that's it. I was actually going to comment on the fact that Wonder needs to step up. I think this series. Oh, we haven't actually talked about this. How do G2 win?
How did G2 win?
We sort of touched upon it, but not in too much detail.
Yeah, we'll start from the top, like we said before. Wonder is going to be a key player in that. I think we need a pick for Wonder where he can win lane and create a lead. I think Yankos needs to be supportive in that creation of his lead. So obviously, I think utilizing red side cat pick potentially for Wonder to make sure he's got as strong a matchup as possible. And then he needs to be on a champion that can then be disruptive, that can, you're going to have these players like Ghost and Beryl who are going to want to sit back. They do their thing. They're kind of slow to come into the fights. If they're just going to get super powerful, then we need to make sure we've got Wonder to get on there and kill them. I think we need to track. I'm blanking. What's the jungler called?
Canyon.
Yeah, we need to track Canyon because he's obviously going to be making sure that he's there to make space for his laners, and that he's going to be silently getting ridiculously strong and ready to carry the game. So we can't let that guy get ahead, get his laners fed, because you know what can happen when these guys Showmaker and Nugri, when they are fed and strong.
Well, that's it. They don't even need to be fed. It's just like a ticking time bomb with Nuguri.
Yeah.
I actually think I know we're in the middle of discussing what Wonder needs to do, and I would like to see, like Camille picks from Wonder.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it looks good on that champion.
Renekton, he's got a really good Renekton.
But before that, I think it's going to come down to drafting.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see G2 pull out something that disrupts the flow of Damwon's draft. Like, I want to see them get a bit invasive.
Okay.
And not let Damwon have their way with it, because if Damwon has their way with their draft, we've seen them be able to execute game plans that fit that draft to a T. So you need to be able to get in their heads before the game even starts. And I want to see, to be honest with you, maybe Mage pick spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's obviously well within G2's skill set. Perks went back to mid for the spring split. Historically has been a mid laner. He has this champ pool of all these mid lane champions. Similarly, Caps can take AD carries in the mid lane. Like, if the correct flexes are available, then I think you're right. I think that's something that they could break out. Did we see Ghost run a mage pick though in bot lane himself?
In Worlds?
I don't think in Worlds. I think in the LCK season.
Yeah, I feel like he has.
Yeah, I'm
feel like
sure there's
Ghost
been at
is
least one
capable.
Ziggs or Syndra game in there for.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Because I was
Did he
thinking
play
like if
Ziggs in
you have
group
the
stage?
Camille and Topside, I
Mhm.
feel like a Ziggs is a really nice little pairing with it
Okay, yeah.
because you just link the ultimates. Obviously,
Yeah. Chuck a Galio in the mid lane as well.
you don't even need that. I don't think you can do, but I would really hate to see Caps on Gallia in
Yeah,
this
he's wasted
series.
on him, isn't it?
I feel like you need to be able to get control of a Showmaker,
Mm.
and if you let him have his way with you, then he'll do just that.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Uh,
unleash caps, and so we're looking at for a blue side draft then for G2. We're probably looking at a Syndra first pick, right? Because caps looks like a monster on it. If it doesn't get banned, it's probably gonna get banned against caps.
yeah, we've seen a lot of Syndra bans, and it wouldn't surprise me. They might be able to draw out a Silas ban as well, but if not, Silas is something you can defer to
Mm-hmm.
because it can be an answer to a game plan that Damwon has.
Mm-hmm.
And if G2 are able to innovate that and turn it on its head, then that'll be a good way to kind of like subvert the drafting phase for Damwon. Failing that, I mean, we know it can pull out Lucian. You've got to like think of it from Damwon's perspective. How many bans do they really want to dedicate to mid lane?
I mean, it depends on how Damwon is rating G2 right now, because if they're just saying, "Oh yeah, Caps, he beat Genji," but so if to Damwon they're like, "Lol, he beat BDD, who cares?" Like, if Showmaker doesn't feel threatened by him, which I don't know, I don't know if Damwon have that kind of arrogance about them. I think they're pretty
Uh,
measured, really, in the grand scheme of things.
I think they have to fear Caps. I think you can't look at him and underestimate him.
Mm.
I've seen a lot of players give a lot of respect over to him. I saw a clip not too long ago of I mean, I know he's not in Worlds right now, but Doomby, the
Mm.
mid laner for FPX who won Worlds last year,
Yeah.
who got into a solo queue game in the Chinese server, and he was laning against Caps, and he was like, "Holy shit, I'm against Caps!" and he was really excited about it.
Yeah.
Kind of like everything else has been boring
Yeah.
for him, but now he's against Caps, so it's not. He
Yeah.
then proceeds to get solo killed. So yeah, I feel like Caps has earned his stripes, and as a result, warrants that degree of attention from Damwon, from
Mm.
anyone. I don't think there's a team that can look at G2 and not think, right, we need to kind of put a leash on Caps, whether it be through bans or through tailoring the draft to kind of stifle him.
Mm.
And I think they're both teams are going to try and do just that, which I think is going to be quite interesting.
It is quite interesting because you're going to see. I think what's really going to happen with draft is you're going to see a trade off, right? You're going to see a trade off where Damwon are willing to sacrifice a little bit in top lane because Nuguri can play quite a good weak side top lane and he can break out whatever champion he needs to. It's still going to be. We've talked about Nuguri before and about how you can shut him down as many times as you want, but he's still going to be relevant no matter how many times you do that. So you can give Nuguri a bit of a weaker matchup in favor of Showmaker getting a stronger mid lane matchup, but conversely, G2 then get Wonder on this strong matchup that we want, where he is going to be able to take pressure and convert it. So they're each going to be playing to their win conditions off the back of draft. That we've just described. They can both have their win conditions. It's just going to be who plays to them better, and G2 more prone to throwing in that situation.
But also more prone to creating a bit of chaos as well.
Also more prone to doing crazy stuff that no other team could do and you could never predict. So yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be a stormer of a series. I did go down one inevitably. I do think it'll be a 3-2. I think it'll be a really close, I think it'll be 3 40-minute games as well because these two teams they scrap and they battle right to the end.
Like we mentioned before, G2 know how to kind of like home in on their win condition at any state of the game.
Yeah.
So if we see a situation similar to the game against Sunni where they were like horrendously down in gold, but they were constantly finding these picks, finding picks on bin, finding picks on SOFM, and stalling the game out longer and longer to the point where the gold lead was like irrelevant because everyone was on the same amount of items.
Gold doesn't matter when everyone's full build.
Well, that's it. And yeah, I agree in the sense that I would love to see these games go to 40 minutes and it be a real tense, kind of a real display of who can perform at that highest level. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's not a case of who played better earlier, who played better late, with the exception of Souls, but given the extra buff, but who can execute that late game team fight and win off it.
Do you know what's really interesting? In my pick'ems, I give this game to Damwon. I also then give the World Championship to Damwon, which is weird because, like, we're saying that top are going to be so dominant on the other side of the bracket, but Damwon really has to fight to win against G2 in the semi-finals, and I don't know. I don't know why Damwon seems to be better than top in my estimation, but so much closer to G2.
Yeah, it's a very no. When you say it like that, it's really strange, and I'm trying to also wrap my head around it as well. But the only way I can kind of try and explain it is that there's a few things going on in both these games that don't relate to top versus Damwon. First of them being the fact that top already beat Suning in the regular season. So this is kind of like a run it back, and that could potentially prey in the back of these players' minds.
Yeah.
Whether it be a confidence boost for top or a bit of a web in the back of the mind for Suning. I mean, these are proven players, so I don't want to say that's going to be too much of an impact. It's not going to decide the game, but we still have to recognise it as a factor. Not only that as well, the fact that the play styles between top and Suning are kind of top favoured, I think. But in G2 and Damwon, it's so hard because it's draft dependent. Like, whatever tactics Damwon wants to use, G2 can probably do as well. Or may have an answer for. But when it came down to like Suning versus G2, it was like we saw instances where G2 just kind of tried to go for these low percentage players that didn't work out, and Suning just capitalized on.
Yeah.
But we still saw G2 like win off these low percentage players. Our very first game that they played against Suning, where they threw in the base, and then Suning kind of rode the train all the way back and proceeded to throw in G2's base.
Yeah.
So, like, they find that low percentage play and they can win off of it, as we spoke about before. That's the kind of thing that Suning don't have against top. So, although I know what you're saying, but I don't really put Suning above G2. Even though they did win, it was very much like, I feel like if Suning were that much better than G2, the games that Suning won wouldn't have gone on as long as they did. If that makes sense.
I guess, yeah. Because their real strength is in the early game. That's where Suning really shines, in the individual laner's prowess. Because Sofum's not even getting involved. He's there spawning camps and killing them. So, like, it's what Suning really do well is they get strong, then they win the game 30 minutes in. Like, they get strong, they wait for the Uber buffs, they wait for the big objectives, they take them, they win the game.
They're smart with their items as well. They're choosing the right items to build, and they're trying to make the most of the lead that they've got. But if G2 were able to still mitigate them fights with that lead, I think it does kind of show credence to G2's ability, and that if that game didn't go as bad for G2 in the early game, is it even a question whether G2 win? If they're able to take these fights from a gold deficit and still come back? I think that's the question, really. Yeah. It might be controversial, but I don't really always like to base everything on results-based analysis.
No.
I
I
think.
just thought it was an interesting way of thinking
Oh, it
about it. It's
definitely
like,
was. Yeah.
why is it in my brain that Damwon has to fight so hard just to get to the finals, but then it almost instantly makes sense to me that Damwon do beat Top. Here's an interesting thought, okay? Because we've actually managed to keep this podcast kind of short. I've got a new topic that I want to throw in the end just to pad us
Oh,
out at
me
the end
too,
as well.
actually. Me too, actually.
But here's an interesting thought: if G2 do beat Damwon, who is your world champion?
I
Could
think
it be G2?
I actually think it could be. I think if
Yeah.
G2 can beat Damwon, I also would have faith that G2 could beat Top, but I would still probably choose Top in my pick'ems.
Yeah.
And what this is a real weird way of saying it, but like it's kind of like if you're giving teams like a 60-40 or a 70-30, right? You give that to normal teams and it kind of just goes that way. You know, the G2 Gen G, you know, people kind of give out G2 a bet, you know, 70-30, G2 3-0. Damwon DRX, if you even wanted to give the DRX 30% chance to win, then, you know, Damwon just kind of rolled over with the 70%. But when it's a case of G2 being the 30%, we've said it like 2 or 3 times already, but they're like the low percentage players.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
So if any team is going to be able to defy the odds, I think it's them.
Yeah. That's
so there is a world where I see G2 win. I think, like, in my eyes, the likelihood of world champions is like Damwon, Top, G2, Suning. But G2 are kind of like, it's just possible, man. It's just possible.
G2 are probably the only of those teams that could jump out of their power ranking, like if they wanted to. Like
yes, yeah. Like I don't even see a world where Suning can win, to be honest.
No, unfortunately not. They've had an amazing run at Worlds. Like no one could take that away from them.
Absolutely.
You know, gone above what they could do in the regular season in the LPL. Gone above expectations at Worlds against international competition. But yeah, I do think it comes to an end this week.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, one way or another, it does anyway, because there's only one more left.
Yeah. So I don't think I actually did my prediction for Damwon G2. I honestly want to say 3-1 Damwon.
You want to say 3-1 Damwon? Okay,
yeah.
G2 only get one game.
I think it's a first game as well.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a similar fashion to what happened with Suning and JD. But I'm hoping I'm wrong because I want a 5-game series.
Yeah.
I want to be there from, is it 11 it starts?
Yep, 11 a.m. BST. Which
I want to be there from 11 till 4. I want 5 games of an hour long.
Yep.
I'm not going to get that.
Keep an eye.
But I do want to be there.
Keep an eye on the schedule because in the UK here we're due to go back an hour on the clocks. So we're coming out of BST back into GMT, which means obviously the time isn't changing in China. So be wary from Sunday because that's when it goes back, I think.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
that was a very helpful tip that you've just said there.
You're very welcome. I'll endeavour to get this video edited and uploaded before Sunday so as to help all our many fans.
Excellent. Both of you.
Yeah.
You've got a new
topic. You've got a new topic.
Yeah. Last thing I think before we round it out.
I've got one more that I want to throw.
Oh, have you?
Unless this is what you want to talk about.
Well, I was actually going to ask you. Does any team, right? So we've got our 4 semi-finalists, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any team you think should be there in place of another?
Ooh. In the semi-finals.
Yeah.
So they'd have had to have got through quarterfinals as well.
So I mean, like, if you could choose the matchup, like, of how they got to semis, do you think there's a team that maybe got a bit of bad luck, and wasn't able to get there through them means, or?
I mean, going all the way back to groups, I think the only team that did get bad luck really was TL. I think they're the only team that if they'd had a better week 1, they'd have been in quarterfinals, which means that they actually get there in place of G2, and then I think TL will lose to Gen G. So I probably not them. I don't think TL make it to.
Oh no, they would be there instead of Suning.
No, because Suning took first.
The game that decided whether or not TL got the tiebreaker was G2 Suning, that Suning won. Yeah. So the way that they get the tiebreaker is G2 winning, and then they get the tiebreaker against Suning.
Yeah, but then I suppose it.
If that makes, yeah. Do you know what I mean? So the circumstances that would lead to TL getting out of groups is a tiebreaker with Suning.
Okay. So so if TL were to take over Suning's spot, then by going first in the group, which that seems crazy, that doesn't seem like that could happen, but then again, I think they just lose to JDG in the quarterfinals anyway. I just don't think they had the same amount of momentum to go through, and I don't think they've got that kind of resilience that G2 do, or Suning that they've shown.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the only other team that probably was gypped a little bit is JDG, but they kind of have to take that on themselves. They kind of just rolled over and lost their series, so I don't think they do deserve to be there instead of Suning in the semis.
Yeah, I actually would have found it really interesting if we saw Gen G and JDG face off.
Okay, yeah.
Or Gen G and Suning. But to go as far as to say that Suning deserved the spot, sorry, that Gen G deserved the spot over Suning is kind of difficult.
I mean, maybe you could say DRX deserved it, right? Because I think probably DRX does get through if they play Suning, JDG. Yeah, I think there's a few players in there that DRX could have got through.
I mean, DRX, yeah, they got really unlucky in the sense that they got put up against down one.
That's shit. That just sucks.
It's just shit.
It is just shit, yeah.
But, so yeah, I like that idea as well. I mean, DRX did place above Gen G, but fans typically put Gen G over DRX in terms of ability. It would be interesting. I think I'm happy with obviously top and down one being in the top 4. I think I'm happy with G2.
Yeah.
And I think you can only really swap Suning with Gen G or DRX.
Yeah.
And even then, I still kind of think based on performance, Suning has looked better than both those teams.
There's no, I'll just disclaimer this whole thing by saying we're not saying at all that Suning don't deserve what they've got. No. It just seems like top and down one being in there are no-brainers. G2, everyone wants G2 to last as long as possible because they keep Worlds so much more entertaining and so much more interesting, especially for a Western audience. But yeah, so the only thing we can think is that Suning don't probably fulfill those qualities themselves, and yeah, that's why they're the one that we kind of bump for a potential 4th spot. But yeah, they've fought and they've deserved it every step of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I would probably still put Suning over. Like, I think in a series, Suning at this point in time do beat Gen G and DRX.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to open the narrative, really.
Yeah, no. You know me. I love a bit of narrative-based discussion. That's what I'm all about. But I think speaking of discussion, that brings our Worlds discussion to the end. One thing I did want to talk about some news and some hot topics going on in the League world in general at the moment. C9 Liqorice being dropped from the main roster, being replaced by C9 Fudge. This has obviously come about with the OPL news that we've discussed a couple of episodes ago. The OPL being dissolved means that Oceanic region players are now NA residents, or at least they don't take up a import slot. What do you kind of think of this coming out of C9?
So I've not really looked too much into Academy. Is that where Fudge is from?
Yeah, it's from C9 Academy, yeah.
So I'll be honest, I didn't really look too much into it. I only just watched NA, really. I mean, we all know you're the NA representative on this podcast.
I am. Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Having said that, I have been listening to other people recently who have been talking about the OPL, the Oceanic kind of like merging, and the discussion that teams in NA might change based on that. Because I think the overarching view is that NA need to make a change in general because of how disappointing this Worlds was for them.
Yeah.
And one of the discussions from that is their Academy League and how good is it actually doing. But I will say that I've heard good things about Fudge. And the fact that he doesn't take up an import slot, I think makes him very desirable. Yeah. So I'm happy to see him in the main roster, to be honest. I've not seen him play, I'll be honest. I didn't watch Academy. But I do watch normal LCS, so I will be seeing him when Spring Split starts. And I'll be able to form a better judgment of him then. And I want to see other players follow suit, really.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about C9, and we talk about does NA Academy, does LCS Academy, does it work at all? And I think C9 Academy has proven, like historically and like even in recent times, that they have created a great talent farm. Blabber is obviously like the most recent MVP in the Spring Split, and he's come up through the Academy system. Obviously now Fudge through the Academy system is looking great. They have players like Diamond who look great. So C9 have this kind of talent farm that they've started to get going now.
I might be wrong, but did C9 also? I know he's not looking too hot now, but did they have Deathly at first, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, no, Deathly. He is now at Evil Geniuses. He plays for Evil Geniuses Academy, I believe.
Right. But at the time, he was looking good, and he was another talent.
Oh yeah, he last year's Worlds he played a game in group stage, subbed out Sneaky. They were already eliminated, but he looked great in that. So yeah, he's now moved across to Evil Geniuses as part of the whole big C9 deal that they did with them, where Evil Geniuses bought all their old shit that they didn't want anymore. But no, it clearly pre-owned, second hand. It clearly wasn't, because as I was saying, C9 have been a talent farm and they've been able to grow their talent, and it's been valuable to them. Liqorice himself, many would argue one of, if not the best top laner in NA. Just so consistent, his stats look great. He's a really intelligent player. He's got a great champ pool. Where does he go now?
I was just about to ask you. Where do you think he ends up?
He obviously, there's no way that no one picks up C9 Liqorice in this off season. He does still have 2 years left on his contract, I believe. So anyone looking to pick him up will have to pay a buyout to buy him out of his contract. But because he's not starting on the main roster, I think that's probably going to be pretty lenient from C9's point of view. So I don't necessarily think it has to be a team with deep pockets. I think C9, I think he's got a lot of value to C9. I think Liqorice does. But if they've already said he's not going to be on the starting roster, he's probably not going to perform in Academy or whatever, if that's where he ends up. That's the deal that they offered to Sneaky, and he told him to stick it. So they have to sell him, and he has to go somewhere. Now, I think if we look at what teams where he possibly could go, I do believe that Impact for Team Liquid is his contract is up in this transfer window. I believe he goes into free agency if his contract is not renewed before then, which we haven't seen anything about yet. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think TL Liqorice is a?
I think it's a possibility. I don't know if it's a probability. It would be beneficial to TL to have another NA resident. Obviously, I think Core JJ at this point doesn't take up an import slot.
I think Core would. I think it's just Core and Broxah right now.
So Impact doesn't take up an import slot.
Impact doesn't. No, I'm pretty sure Impact's been there.
Okay, fair enough.
Because you're only allowed 2, aren't you?
Yeah, you're only allowed 2. Broxah definitely takes 1.
Yeah, it has to be Broxah and Core.
Okay. I didn't realize Core was more recent import into North America. But yeah. Anyway, at least it's then resident for resident in the swap, because they can't pick up an import laner. But that being said, I don't know if Brox has long to the team either, so I don't know if necessarily they can get a resident jungler as well. But who knows? Just that's off topic. Liqorice, I could also see going to. Let's think. TSM doesn't make sense. I don't think he ends up there. TSM definitely have the deep pockets to afford him. So if they did want him, they could have him. Broken Blade, though, just coming off the back of probably one of his best splits ever. And when TSM blew up the roster last, the only person that Bjergsen kept with him on the team was Broken Blade. So, yeah, I think...
I don't see TSM picking him up.
I don't see TSM picking him up. FlyQuest seemed to be doing really well with solo. He seems to fit the bill. Although I do think FlyQuest with Liqorice is stronger.
I actually feel like FlyQuest picking up Liqorice would be massive.
Yeah, I do think it is an upgrade for sure. And they went to Worlds this year with Liqorice in their roster and a bit better group. I think that FlyQuest maybe makes out of groups. There's plenty of potential in there. If we continue down, obviously C9 were fourth. Golden Guardians is probably your next best bet.
Yeah, I mean, Haunts are still okay, so I kind of feel like
Haunts are still okay, but I think it's one of those where if Golden Guardians feel it's time to come and slap people with their wallets, like if they have a wallet at all. I know that they really do spend low on their roster, but if they think it's finally time to invest, then a player that you can invest in and immediately boost your entire roster is Liqorice. FBI now is a resident as well, so they can look at an import in a different slot.
That's true, actually. Yeah.
So they could import a jungler. He is an import, isn't he?
Closer,
yeah, he is an import.
Closer is, but Closer should be doing really well. I think it would be pretty bad for them to get rid of Closer right now.
I suppose it's only Huhi then that even gets swapped. Demonte maybe. Demonte seems to get binned off pretty easily.
Tanner time though.
It is Tanner time, and he's definitely a favourite of mine. But yeah, having Liqorice, again, it's a resident for resident, so you don't have to worry about losing an import slot there.
Yeah, so let's just look at the bottom 4 teams of LCS. Do you see any of them essentially getting their hands on him?
Immortals,
so we're talking
Immortals, no way. Dig's a team that could throw the wallet at it. They are a well-off team, but I don't see Liqorice wanting to go to the team that finished 9th last split. Who else we got down there? 100 Thieves.
CLG.
Oh, do you know what? I forget about CLG. I always try to forget. CLG is another one where if the wallet gets thrown, they've got the backing for it. If the whole roster gets exploded, which it kind of already is because Pobelta's not in there anymore, I don't believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Pobelta's already been told that he can look for other opportunities. But CLG notoriously a very weak top lane in Ruin. So I think you only make it stronger by putting in Liqorice there. And I think again, if CLG were to blow up the roster, they were to start by buying Liqorice. I think that's immediately a beacon where you can say, look, we've done it. We've got the best top laner in NA, which means that we should have a really good jungler. If you come here, you get to play with Liqorice, which means that we get a really good mid laner. If you come here, you get to play with Liqorice and this amazing jungler we've managed to pick up, and all the dominoes kind of fall into place there. It would be huge. It would take a lot of money, but I suppose out of those bottom 4 teams, CLG is probably the one that could do it, and they do still have that history behind them, right? They do still have that story history of victories of past, which they could probably sell someone on that as well.
Do you see a world where 100 Thieves been off someday for him?
Nah. Someday gets to stay for as long as he wants to stay. Until someday wants to go back to Korea, he gets to stay. You'd be a fool to bin off someday.
So we're probably looking at FlyQuest, CLG, maybe TL, maybe Dig.
Yeah. No. Actually, take Dig out there. No, not even close. I don't think there's a world. I think honestly, I do think C9 will take the person who's willing to pay the money.
Yeah.
But I just don't think I don't think Liqorice himself. I think he'd rather just sit on a bench than go to Dig. It doesn't do anything for him. Dig have just announced that they're locking in Dardoch as their jungler for next season, so
Okay.
there's an element of not wanting to spend there already. So yeah, whatever team Dig is building as well, it works with jungler with Dardoch as the jungler, who is the only sort of announced player for next season.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but this whole OPL thing is completely changing the way that immediately it's changing the way that NA is working, because initially C9 said this is our roster, we're sticking with it, and as soon as that announcement comes through, they go, "Ooh, we've got an Oceanic player, and now we don't have to bin off Niski or Sven to put him in. So let's let's just do it. Let's just chuck him in there. See you later, curly haired guy."
But yeah, so it'd be exciting to see where he actually does end up and the changes that will come about as a result of the Oceanic region now effectively becoming residents in NA.
Yep. And that is the next exciting thing to talk about after Worlds is finished, is the sort of free agency transfer window that will open. I think it opens 2 weeks after Worlds finishes. So the podcast will maybe take a little break after Worlds finishes, but probably come back to talk about some off-season stuff.
Yeah, I'll be up for that.
Wicked. Well, predictions are locked in then. I'm going Damon and Top to reach finals. I think you're going the same. And yeah, we will have to see on our next podcast how that worked out. And I'm really hyped to see these games.
Me too. And we'll be back for a little finals discussion, I think.
Absolutely. Can't wait. Thanks for today, Al. And thank you for watching.
Goodbye.
Layers.